Hey, hello, friends. Welcome to the show. I'm your host. And folks, seriously, do we have someone special for you today? Today, I'm going to ask you, everybody, just sit up a little straighter. Um, we're talking to a man who defended North America and three-star general, then took the same crisis leadership principles and tools and protocols to transform higher education, from managing NYU's global security across 15 campuses, 11 countries during, remember COVID? To now serving over 45,000 students and faculty at the University of Colorado in Boulder. Please welcome Major General Jack Riggs. Thanks for joining us on the show, Jack.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate this very much, the opportunity. It's been great to get to know you and what you do, and to be with your audiences is
So you're a big dog. You are a big dog, but you're also a very, very hungry and humble gentleman, and that's wow. I think you just fit the prototype of what we look for. You're an executive at one of the largest institutions, learning institutions in the country, but you're also founder of Front Right Strategies, and where you're helping campus leaders navigate really some tricky, complex crises.
Yes. Well, first of all, thanks again for letting me be here. And when I think about what I did in the military, when I was getting ready to retire, I wasn't really sure that I wanted to go into the defense industry, which is typical maybe for retiring generals.
Yeah, as a contractor or
something like that,
right,
or maybe go to the airlines. I was a pilot in the Air Force for 30 plus years. So, but I was attracted to higher education for a variety of reasons. I've always been a bit of a nerd when it comes to academics. I enjoyed school. I enjoyed continuing to learn. And one of my peers who had retired just before I did had gone into higher ed and said, you need to look at this because our skill sets, they had been a general as well. Our skill sets translate better than people think. And so I started looking around, and I ended up with an opportunity at New York University, and it was a wonderful time. It really was 4 years there, most challenging, having 15 campuses, 11 countries, and working on that. But then we had COVID hit, and I helped to run the university's response to COVID. It was there that I started to see that some of my principles that I had used in the military and developed over my leadership career became very attractive to these senior leaders in these crises. And that's where I started to think, maybe I could expand the audience of folks that I could help. So that's really where I'm kind of tracking now.
I would love to get into the practicalities, and the listeners to the show, they're always looking at, yes, a little bit of theory, want to know where it comes from, but really more so the practice. So there are a number of fundamentals, and I know that you've got your own frameworks and tools. You've taught a few of them to me, and they're sticky. They just seem to be sticky. And you said that they have great transfer between military life. You might have to nuance them a little bit to academia, but what is that fundamental connection? What are maybe a practice or two that you've been able to take very, very successfully and move it into, whether it be decision making or conflict management? Do you have a few tools that are just kind of your own signature tools, Jack?
Sure. Yeah. So in my 40 years of being around making hard decisions, whether I was a fighter pilot in combat or responsible for the health, welfare, and mission execution for 35,000 war fighters in Afghanistan. You mentioned the Defender of North America. It's kind of a weird title. I was responsible for the defense of North America from the Arctic Circle down to the Mexico-Guatemala border, and both the approaches from the oceans, from ballistic missile defense, counterterrorism, counter drug.
Whatever the title, you owned it, sir. You owned it, so it doesn't matter.
And then in higher education, as you mentioned at NYU, and I took a short stint as a CEO of a nonprofit to help out something that I was really passionate about. But then back into higher ed, I've noticed that there's three characteristics that every great decision maker has. These are across the board, doesn't really matter about the industry or the area. It's these three things. The first is great decision makers make their decision based on principles. They think about the principles of themselves and the organization, and they point their decision, because you have a kind of a universe of decisions that you can make initially. They point that decision in a certain direction. Think of an archer. So an archer pointing in that direction of a particular target. The second thing is they're humble. They're humble enough to ask for help. So again, we'll go back to the archer. An archer can pull the bow back about here, but if you ask for help, you can fully empower the bow all the way back. You can get all the power into it.
Yeah.
Yep. And then the third thing is they're decisive. I know that's a little redundant. Decision maker that's decisive, but think of that archer again. They're not paralyzed in this position, pointing in the right direction, powered up, but they just can't shoot, right? So you have to be decisive. Those three things are as I have observed and seen good decision makers, that's really where we work on the hard decisions that people are going to have to make.
So I hope you took some notes there, folks. I did as well. I mean, those three I think navigational principles, if you will, principles and being humble and being decisive, regardless of the situation. Those are all transferable to, any situation that might be hitting your fertilizer fan at the minute. Right. I'd like to know, maybe to go back a little bit, because,
Sure.
2020 through about 2022, we were there's no map for us to even walk into this territory. Right. I want to know, how did you go about, because oftentimes you can't make decisions without good information. Right. In the military, you probably called that the ground truth. Right. So how do you get the ground truth from 15 different campuses that were being, all impacted differently, versus maybe what was being reported up the chain? How do you differentiate? Where does the wisdom come from?
Right. Well, you brought up a couple of points there that I think are important. If you're going to have a crisis, if a crisis occurs, let's say that, right? The first thing is, you don't solve a crisis. You solve problems. And that's a big differentiation, because the crisis was COVID. But what were the problems it created? Health, access. These were all chunkable problems out of the crisis. And so I would always try to tell people, you can tell me what your crisis is. I want to help to start chunk it down into solvable problems. And in the case of COVID, of course, large university, completely different cultural aspects. When you think about, we have campuses in Abu Dhabi and Shanghai and Buenos Aires and Sydney and all through Europe. If I had been unfamiliar with those locations, I would have been guessing. But I had taken the time to go out and introduce myself, and not just at the surface level, but get to what it was I could do, what could I do to bring value in my position to those folks that were responsible on the ground there. Same as a general, you're trying to figure out, how can I be the snowplow in front of you to get things out of the way, and the glass cleaner upper behind you, so that if it gets broken, and as long as you're doing your best, I'm not going to take your birthday away. I'm going to clean up the glass. We may have to coach a little bit on how we did that, but keep moving.
Wow.
Right. So as I try to figure that out as the leader, I'm trying to empower those folks. And the other piece is, very deliberately, I would tell my peers, my supervisors, my subordinates, I'm disagreeable. I'm very disagreeable. And I don't mean in the sense of like, nah.
Yeah.
I mean in the sense of, I am disagree-able. You are able to disagree with me.
Ooh, that is good.
Right? You're able, and I need you to. Because quite frankly, I used to tell my staff as a general officer, I need you to disagree with me because, quite frankly, I always agree with me. Like
Mhm.
100% of the time, I agree with me. And if all of you just agree with me, you're all extra because I've
We
already
don't need
got
it.
it,
We don't
right?
need it.
I, right. I need you to be polite and professional, but I need you to bring up the things that I'm not seeing
Yeah.
or that I'm wishing away. Right. These are, I don't want to deal with that because it's too hard. Hey, boss, we need to talk about this. I know you don't want to talk about it, but we need to talk about it. And by being disagreeable,
Hubble.
right, I'm inviting those 15 campus leaders to call me and say, Jack, the the main campus is saying we have to do this. That doesn't work here. Our local government won't approve that. I'm like, well, okay, tell me more, right? What are we trying to get to that
Wow.
works for you?
Isn't that the difference between being knowledgeable, right,
Yeah.
and wisdom?
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
there's no. Oftentimes, there's no recipe card. Right now, leaders of campuses are not operating from the recipe card that their predecessor
Yeah.
had,
True.
right? And I have my own dispositions. I see the world as I see the world, right? But the world doesn't have a disposition. The world has
I like that.
lots of different
I like
dispositions,
that. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if I'm going to become wise, right,
I'm writing that down, by the way.
as the author, Solomon, the author in some of the most in scripture talks about just being wise. That is not being knowledgeable. Um, it's being
Yeah.
able to differentiate yourself and be disagreeable. We just sewed something together here
Right.
that's rich.
That's a
That
good
is
one.
so
Yeah.
rich.
Yeah. And
So rich.
so the other piece to what you kind of brought up about COVID was you couldn't just do this willy nilly. This had to have, for the lack of a better phrase, a battle plan.
Yeah.
Right. And battle plans aren't just like, hey, we'll show up and see how it goes. Right. You have operational risks, you have financial risks, and you have reputational risks. And you have to create structures and frameworks to address those. And you do that by having the first thing is access to the right people. And so when I was asked to lead the response by the president and the chair of the board of trustees, I said, here's like a non-negotiable thing if you're going to ask me to do this. I have to have access to the senior leaders and to the board because we have to be talking about the hard things. And we have to set a plan where everybody is on the same sheet, in the same direction, those principles, right? The
Right.
decisions we're going to make here, the principles we're going to use as the organization to make those. But
And
I have to
humble
hear
enough
those and
to
we have
be
to work through them.
disagreeable, right?
Right?
Humble enough to be disagreeable as we look at those principles.
Exactly.
Yes.
And say that's just not going to work in this context. We have to make some compromises, maybe. And compromise is not always a bad word, right? It may be the best thing we can do to get to a doable 80% solution in something that we're doing. So we created a framework of meetings as an example. And it started off on a Monday and it was a non-negotiable. Monday, I met with the most senior leaders in the organization. On Tuesdays, I met with the kind of the doer level of executives. On Thursdays, I met with the deans because the deans, they want to help, but
Mhm.
they have another problem set called faculty.
Yeah, or stuck in the middle of it all ism.
Right. So the deans, so I would meet with the deans and we would talk about what was happening in their sphere as well. And in between on the Wednesday and the Friday, I would be speaking to the 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 geographically separated campuses. So I was always in this conversation loop about a week ahead of what we were actually doing so that we could demystify some of the next steps that we were going to take because a lot of time the the anxiety that occurs is because what are we going to do next?
Mhm.
And as leaders, another tool here that I'll just give you is leaders have to be able to control their reactions. when something scary happens. So if I'm a general officer and something bad happens and I panic, that's not good. So what I coach folks is, let's imagine you have a scale of reaction to an event. If you as the leader react up here, everybody around you that works for you is going to try to react here, just
Hmm.
above you. Why? Because they want to subconsciously prove they are as bought in or more bought in than you are to getting to the solution,
We are, yeah, we can react just as well, if not better.
right? So
What's the
what
better word then instead of react?
you want to, well, here's what you want
Here
to
we
do
go.
is you want to push your reaction way down here to the bottom of the scale and give them all this room to respond,
There it is. There it is.
right? Not react, but to respond. To remember, I said it's a crisis. You're up here. Nope. You want your crisis reaction to be down here because the next problems that you're going to solve require responses. They require you to think of them as issues,
Is that a
not even as
teachable skill, Jack, to be the slowest heart rate in the room during crisis? Can
it's
you
tough.
teach that? Can you
It's
teach that?
tough. So here, I'll give you an example. It's about a month into my command at Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan in 2010, and I wake up in the morning and had just gotten my morning brief and was leaving the room uh, of our operations center when I was called back in because there was a large scale attack on the base, and it was serious. It was very serious. We had some fatalities. It was a big firefight for almost a day. And as I walked in to the operations center as the leader, every head snapped to look at me because they wanted to see where I was reacting. And when I looked at him and I said, "Okay," because it was early in the morning. I said, "Okay, I hope everybody had a big breakfast. It's going to be a long day. Get at it." And they all looked at me and went, "Whew,
Mm.
okay, he's not panicked, so I'm not panicked. I'm going to go do my job." It instills in them immediately. I have confidence in them that they're going to go do what they need to go do. It's going to be hard, but they're going to do it. Right. And so if I, as the leader, can control my reaction, now I'll tell you, underneath the surface, I was like that duck on water. I was like, "Oh, this is serious." But I couldn't.
You're still human. You're still
Right.
human. So that self-management muscle was just bulging.
It was to keep that reaction down. But it's not just enough to control your reactions. Another tool that you need to have is you need to have, what are we going to do like right now next? Because you can panic, you can freeze, you can have that fight or flight sort of mentality. And so I always coach leaders, um, have something that you're going to do next, like that is almost automatic. And for me, I coach, here's 4 questions you should ask. And oh, by the way, you should tell people when there is no crisis going on, these are the 4 questions I'm going to ask you. So be prepared to
Be
answer
prepared.
these 4 questions.
Mhm.
But you got to stick to the 4 when you ask them. Because okay, all right, everybody, go at it. First question: what do we know? I want the truth. I want the
Mhm.
absolute truth, not what we think, the only things that we know for fact. That may be very small. That may not be a lot of things. Because the second question is more important, and it's the one that drives it all. And that is, what don't we know? I am going to ask you what you don't know. That is magic because of a couple things. One, I'm giving you permission as the leader to not know stuff. You don't have to fake it. So I can believe the first things you told me that you know
Right.
better because I'm going to tell you, you don't have to know everything.
It's giving them permission to be vulnerable,
Sure.
to and real and honest and all those things that we need humans also to be, doing while they're responding.
Exactly.
Yes.
And the other piece that magic is this: you don't have to sit in your office with your friends or your staff and go, well, he might ask this and he might ask that and he might ask that. We got to be prepared for all of those. No, you can come to me faster because you already know what I'm going to ask you. The third thing, we can't just let it hang there, right? So what do we know? What don't we know? The third one is, what are we doing about it? I'm going to ask you, what are we going to do next from your perspective, not to solve the crisis, but to address the problems, right? And you're going to say, well, our decision-making process based on our principles is we're going to go in this direction. I may give you some advice. I may say, okay, go for it. What do you need? I'm the snowplow. I'm the cleaner upper. What does you need from me? Right. And that drives the fourth question, because you've told me what you know. You've told me what you don't know. You've told me what you're going to do next. If you leave it right there, I'm going to bug you. I'm going to be calling you back like every 5 or 10 minutes going, hey, what's the update? What's the update? What's the update? The fourth question is driven to giving me something to do as the leader. And it's this: who else needs to know? And the reason that's important is because you need to have built relationships before the event that then you leverage during the event. And as the leader, I want you to say, here's what we are going to do about it, but I need your help to do this. Like, we have a power outage here at the university because it's a snowmageddon, right? We get so much snow that the power goes out. We have some plants that we can power our own buildings. We have others that we have to use the community's power company. Well, as the leader, I know that it snows a lot in Colorado, so I should probably pretend at least that it might snow enough that we lose power. I'm going to go have lunch with it's the who do I have lunch with gang, right? And I have lunch with the power company guy or gal, and we get friendly about what we're trying to do. And then when I call, I say, hey, Susan, I need your help with this. We've lost power to 2 of our dorms. It's getting cold. Parents are going to call me, right? Can I get some help? Sure, Jack. We'll run some teams out there to see if we can't get some emergency power going, or maybe we'll bring a generator or whatever it is, right? Now, I'm not involved in your day-to-day, minute-to-minute micromanaging what you're doing, because you're the subject matter expert of solving the problems that we've chunked. But you've given me something of good responsibility at my level to do. So
Yeah,
what do we
it's a
know?
difference really between having to manage something that you're ill-equipped to do and empowering those.
Mhm.
That last question, that's brilliant, brilliant. You also talked about the principles involved, and I wonder if that question probably integrates into those 4 questions as well. The reasons why we're doing what we did or we're doing, it's all values or mission or principles driven.
Right.
So that probably even starts the party before what do you know? Hey,
Oh,
who we are,
exactly. It's
who we
because you
are, right?
need to tell your staff what the principles are and have conversations about it way ahead of time so that they kind of know the direction. That you also need to give them a clue about your risk tolerance. Now, for you, your listeners, this may not come as a surprise, but I'm a very, very risk tolerant individual. Risk to me is like, okay, let's give it a shot. But that's not, that's good and bad. So I have people around me, my staff, who monitor the fact that I'm willing to take more risk than the average person. And they come to me because I'm disagreeable, and they say, hey, boss,
Yeah.
that's probably a little too risky.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
okay.
you don't represent the other 90% of us.
No,
That's the reality.
no. And you need to be able to talk to them in terms of operational, financial, and most importantly, reputational risk, because that's really what leaders can manage operational and financial risk pretty comfortably. It's the reputational risk that they get hung up on. And big leaders of big organizations, I'll put it that way, they will make thousands of decisions every year,
Mhm.
but there's probably going to be 10-ish that are critical
Mhm.
in a year, that have an immediate, significant financial, operational, or uh, reputational risk impact, or a long term of those 3. And being able to decipher those. And unfortunately, when you're in the decision making throes of those really critical ones, often The options you're presented, remember, what are you going to do about it? Well, they go out and they figure out what they're going to do. They come back and they present options to you. None of them are great. They're hard. All of them have pros and cons, and a lot of cons. But you as the leader have 3 jobs at this moment, right? The first is you get to say yes or no. You own it. I mean, you get to say yes or no. That's your skill set in as a leader. It's not. I wish I could have said as a general that my skill set was flying airplanes, but it was not. It was saying yes and no to stuff. The second one is that you have to pick the least worst option. Okay. You're not going to get the best option.
Yeah.
Typically, because all the easy decisions have already been made. And the third one is you have to own it. You can't blame somebody else when you made a decision. But here's the magic in this. If I'm in that moment where I've got to make a decision and I've got I've principles, I've empowered the bow with my humility of asking others. I know what we know and we don't know. I'm sitting at that moment where I don't have a lot of great options, but I'm going to pick one. I can be confident that I'm making the best option pick that I can, making the best decision that I can at that moment. I'll give you a visual. Have you ever seen those surfers that surf those gigantic waves? I mean, they're just, who does that?
Right.
Right. There's a moment when they're at the top of the wave and it's just starting to come. That crisis is just starting to come, and they've got a thing that they can do, which is ride the wave. They got to commit. They got to get in the wave at that moment. If they hesitate too long, the wave's going to pass them, the solution's going to get put off, and the wave's going to crash, and it's going to hurt things. If they go too soon, or they get wishy-washy about the decision and they just kind of commit, the wave will consume them.
Right. And we've seen that happening to some very big name campus leaders that did not have the courage to be decisive.
And so in that moment, it's like, we're in, right? We're totally in now into this, and we're moving that direction. Why is that important? Because I've committed to the best decision I can make at that moment. People are going to try to judge me on the outcomes of the decision. And I, as someone who goes through this a lot with leaders, I typically tell them in the aftermath of a crisis, I'm going to spend less time focused on the outcomes, and I'm going to spend almost all of my time focused on, did you make a good decision at the time? Because you see, in between the decision and the outcome is luck. It's the weather. It's a new fact shows up that we didn't know before. Right. All of those things affect the outcome. But in the moment, I made the best decision that I could make. And that's defensible. That's defensible in Congress. That's defensible with the press. That's defensible with parents. That's defensible, right? Because if I try to guess what the outcome is going to be and modulate my decision, it's backwards. Mm-hmm. Because you're not going to dictate how the outcome actually happens. But if I make a good decision here, and then I make another good decision, and then I make another good, I'm compounding interest on good decisions. And what I'm really doing is I'm narrowing the scope or the spectrum of outcomes. Because initially I have like a universe of outcomes. I make a good decision, I narrow it. I make another good decision, I narrow it. I make another one, I narrow it. And in the end, I get to a spectrum that I can live with.
Right. You become that force multiplier, I think, through all of that activity, which I think all of the public is actually looking for, what does leadership look like today? Because we don't need any more leaders on this planet. We have enough titled leaders with preferred parking spaces, but I'm trying to think of, just a handful that would resonate. It would be emblematic to the type of leader that you're talking about here, Jack. I wish we had another hour and a half, I would be dialing up and we'd be ordering pizza, but we got to bring this into a close.
Okay.
I've never listened so much and talked so less in my own podcast because
I just talked too
you,
much.
sir, no. You have so much to offer, and you've demonstrated what genuine leadership requires. It's that courage, it's the character, it's commitment, it's decisiveness. The same things that you would ask of a military leader are so transferable into our educational systems today. We're going to bring this into a landing, but I'm going to ask you, is there a final word of encouragement or wisdom that you would offer to anyone leading systems and people in these challenging days?
I would say don't shy away from what you're good at and recognize where you need help. It really comes back to that humility moment. If I've got my principles kind of narrowed down, no human is designed to solve every problem. There's not one human on the planet that can solve every problem. And problems are different. And so you need to surround yourself with people of diverse thought, culture,
Mhm.
intent. You need to be able to work with them, right? In that nature, to bring all that power together with this caveat. You're going to bring all of that in, but you own the decision.
Period. No other explanation.
Yeah.
I think that's what sets you apart as a leader of leaders, and just so encouraged to know that you are practically working with many big name leaders today. If you happen to be one of the leaders out there and you're kind of stuck and could use, he squeezed a lot of wisdom out today. What is the best way for folks to get a hold of you, Jack? You've got a number of services that you offer, not just to your great state of Colorado, but I would imagine that you're doing this countrywide. How do they get a hold of you?
The easiest would be just to email me, jack@contactfrs.com. That's jack@contactfrs.com.
Very good. I'm sure they can direct message you via LinkedIn, connect
Oh yeah, or
with you via
LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn.
all those other places as
Happy
well.
to do that too.
So much to offer. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. This has been
Dr. Joe. This is fun.
Yes. So the show where we equip leaders to serve with purpose, like this amazing human that we've had the opportunity to listen to. Until next time, let's all just keep our dukes up and keep fighting for each other. Peace, friends.
Amen.
Thanks.